A closer look at a female covert narcissist. My name is Jared Mello, author of Radical Self-Respect, Avoid Falling for the Same BS. The Audible version of this book should be out within the next 30 days as Audible approves it, but it's already on Amazon, the ebook version now. The grade's going to be great for people that have struggled with codependency. Maybe they've not been happy while single. They've struggled with boundaries, struggled with being assertive, working on their mindsets, or struggle with alcoholism or addictions or mental health stuff. My book will be awesome for all of these types of people. And I came up with this concept after dating a female covert narcissist. So that's how it all ties in. And thank you very much to everyone who's been liking, commenting, and subscribing to my channel here. I've greatly appreciated all of your support. And please do share my content with others who you think might enjoy learning about radical self-respect, because from here on out, that's what my channel is going to be about. Every video will incorporate an element of radical self-respect because I think it's just that important. I think if people learn how to practice radical self-respect, so many issues will go away, and including the issue I'm going to talk about right now, which was with the female covert narcissist I was dating. Now, when we practice radical self-respect, we keep our feet on the ground and remain emotionally independent, as opposed to getting swept away with the good feelings that another person can bring us. So when we keep our feet on the ground, we do not start ignoring red flags. Now, the red flags I'm going to talk about in this video, not all of them will be exclusive to a female covert narcissist, but there's still certainly red flags. And so let's begin with Instagram. On this girl's Instagram account, there would be pictures of her from all over the world by herself, with never anyone in the picture with her. And I know now that she was a sugar baby, and so it makes sense that she's all over the world and the sugar daddies are taking her picture. And as a guy in this era, it's just absolutely something we have to worry about. The more attractive the woman, the more likely it could be that she is sugar babying around. And unless you're okay with that kind of thing, then you're going to want to know about this. You're going to want to watch out for these types of red flags. And she also always had money, and she never had a full-time job. She would sometimes clean apartments with her roommate, but she had a lot of money all the time. She'd throw it around, pay for stuff for me, give me money, and yet she had no job. Another thing that didn't really add up. And back to Instagram real quick, she would like all of my posts. And this is one of her versions of love bombing that would try to keep me on the hook. And it turns out I wasn't very special with this, because she was doing this to like 10 other dudes too at the exact same time. And if I would have looked at her activity, I would have been able to see this. But instead, I was desperate to be loved. I was desperate to love. And I looked past all of these warning signs, and to my detriment. But fortunately, I did learn about radical self-respect because of it. Another red flag I'd seen was a few weeks into dating, I saw a condom wrapper on her bureau. And I jokingly said something about it because I saw it. And she had said it was from a couple months previously, and it was just a casual fling, but she ran into the bathroom and got all upset when I pointed it out to her. And obviously this was like a guilty conscience type thing, even though we weren't exclusive, so I didn't really have much of a ground to stand on, but it was still something maybe to not be seeing, right? Like why leave that out unless you want the person to say something? And I don't know about any ladies out there, but how long do you keep condom wrappers on your bureaus for? Certainly not a couple months, I would say. So that was another warning sign that I just neglected. What else? And speaking of her friends, for example, she would tell me that she was not really that close with her roommates. She would act all buddy-buddy with them, and there were two gay dudes were her roommates. And she would act buddy-buddy, but she would say, they don't really know me. She would say they're kind of out to get her, and people back in Brazil would like call her out for partying on Instagram. And she would talk about how people were out to get her it seemed like, and how she was a victim. Narcissists usually are the victims or the heroes of all the stories they tell, so this all adds up too. And in regards to her relationship with me, she never really asked me any in-depth questions about my life. The only in-depth thing she asked was, why did your previous relationships end? And I know now it was only so that she could tell, like, the reason why she devalued and discarded me were the reasons I told her. And so she used what I told her against me, weaponized my vulnerability. And again, when we practice radical self-respect, be very careful with showing any sorts of vulnerabilities because the wrong types of people will certainly exploit them. And another thing she told me was she had gone to a psychic, and I'm not sure if you believe in any past life regression type stuff, but the psychic had told her in her previous life she's raped and murdered by a bunch of men. And so it appeared that her mission in this life was to hurt as many men as possible. A Jezebel type spirit. And she also was really into astrology, birth charts, birth times, the moons, and witchcraft. If a woman you know is into those kinds of things, just another warning. I'm not saying it's certainly and definitely a reason, definitely a sign, but it's just something to keep your party sense up about. And so the last story I'm going to tell about this female covert narcissist is there was a guy who was struggling with depression, struggling with alcoholism, and he fell in love with her. And of course, she devalued and discarded him. But since he struggled with alcoholism and depression, he let this really hurt him. And he killed himself over her. And as she told me the story, she was laughing about it. She was laughing about the fact that someone killed himself over her. And the guy's mother even blamed her for her son's death. And I don't blame her for that. But I don't think it was all this girl's fault. The guy was a vulnerable guy, and he was susceptible to this kind of thing. And he didn't know about narcissists. He didn't know about practicing radical self-respect, or maybe the tragedy could have been avoided. But that was really sadistic of this woman to kind of get that enjoyment and laughter out of that. And that was a huge warning. Like, this was after it was all said and done. I learned about that. And it was just like, wow. That's how little she really cared. That's how little she cares about anyone. And that's just how they are. So this is why it's so important to practice radical self-respect, to see these kinds of things coming, to have our feet on the ground, to remain emotionally independent, and just make sure it doesn't happen again. And whatever bad that happens to us out there, there's always something to learn in it. And I tried to take a look at my side of the street, and I learned, what could I have done better in this situation? And what I could have done better was practice radical self-respect. I could have loved myself while single. I could have been assertive. I could have guarded my heart a little bit as opposed to just diving right in. Because when there's a sense of urgency and diving right in, it speaks to a certain level of anxiety or fear. And I think that's absolutely true. It's like, when we're good with ourselves, we let things unfold slowly. We know that we don't really know someone until we've been with them for at least a year. All 4 seasons, seen them in many situations, seen them around their family and friends, etc. Because people can hide who they are for a few months. People can have a mask, especially the female covert narcissist. She'll have a mask for about 3 months. And that's about as long as they can keep the mask up for. And then you're going to see who they really are. And underneath it all, underneath the love bombing, underneath the attractive appearance, there's just a cold soul. A cold soul that likes power, that likes money, that likes love and admiration. And that's really as far as it goes. And when we practice radical self-respect, we'll be more on the lookout for this type of person. And they're out there. And I should have done a better due diligence of recognizing some of these things before they went out. But since I was eager to fall in love, I wasn't whole on my own, I let all of these things happen. And because I look back at the scenario, and if I would have guarded my heart a little bit more and remained emotionally independent, it would not nearly have been as devastating as it was. It was only devastating because at the time, I still believed in a soulmate. I still believed in the one. And I thought she was it. And so I was thinking, I'm going to marry this person. And now, I don't even think I believe in marriage at this point. But I just think it's a very dangerous proposition for men in this day and age in America because they get a bad deal. But maybe I want to have kids one day, but that's really about it. And so, but anyway, I know that's what happened. And I know I got to be on the lookout for that. And I got to know that there might not be a soulmate out there. There are good ones and there's bad ones. And it's up to us to be able to distinguish the difference. And so keeping our feet on the ground, practicing radical self-respect, having boundaries, having a life we enjoy without someone. These are things that are all key. So we need to have hobbies, have our purpose and mission, have like friends and family, and to have stuff going on in our own lives. That helps with not falling in love too soon. That helps with keeping our feet on the ground. But the more miserable we are single, the more susceptible to a predator-type person we will be. And these narcissistic people, they have a sixth sense for the people who are not okay on their own. They have a sixth sense for people that don't have good boundaries, have a hard time saying no, who are people pleasers. And that's on us. Like, I wasn't a completely innocent victim in all of this. I played a part. There's always, it takes two to tango, so they say. And my part was codependency. My part was not being okay on my own. My part was losing my emotional independence and becoming addicted to her. These were all of my parts. And as a guy, maybe you can relate. Maybe you fell head over heels for the love bombing and you let yourself get carried away. But perhaps it happened for a reason. And it only has to happen once, hopefully, for us to learn the lesson. And so the lesson I learned was to practice radical self-respect. And I'm trying to share that lesson with as many people as possible. And I want to help spread the word of practicing radical self-respect. Because Dr. Stephen Covey says in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that it's so important to have spiritual principles, to have principles that guide us. Because here's the thing. When I listen to my feelings can lead me astray. Because they can go up and down and they can be erratic. But when I act in accordance to a principle, the principle of radical self-respect specifically, then it keeps me grounded. It keeps me living by a code. And the code has never led me astray so far. The code of radical self-respect has always protected me from everything around me. It's protected me and kept me safe, and it's the best way to treat ourselves. We can't expect others to treat us respectfully if we don't even respect ourselves. That's the beauty of practicing radical self-respect. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this video. Do you have any other comments about a female covert narcissist? I'd love to hear it. And do you agree or you disagree with what I had to say about practicing radical self-respect? I'd love to hear pushback against it, because up until this point, I have not heard any good pushback against practicing radical self-respect. I'd be open to hearing any other viewpoints about it though, but as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to practice radical self-respect every day, all day, no matter what, from here on out. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.